Hello, Alex. How are you?
Well, I don't know how I am, because talking to someone
It's
like
raining.
you, I feel I should say something like, Madam, Lady, You're
no,
Honourable.
it's Barbara Taylor from Upper Armley, Leeds. No, I don't think I'm better than anybody, actually. Someone said to me recently, you really stole that girl from Leeds inside, aren't you? And I said yes, which means I'm very nice.
Yes. When I look at your statistics, I'm not talking personally, you understand. I mean, you've had so many books and such massive success. 82 million copies is what I've got written here. That's going up by the second, because you've got a brand new book out, and it's called Playing the Game, and it's salt of the earth. That's the thing about your books. I mean, when we read them, they're of the people. Does that come naturally to you when you start writing, that it just flows, or is that a struggle?
Well, a book is always hard work because there's, a lot goes into making a book easy to read. And my books are easy to read whilst having quite a lot of depth. So I'm always juggling a lot of elements. But when I get the original idea, it's usually the idea of a character. And I had the idea of this woman who is attractive in her late 30s, very successful, gets sudden great fame through something she does, and then is afraid if she's interviewed by prying journalists, her past might come out, and she has a rather murky past. And that's how it usually begins, with a character, and then I think, well, why are they interesting or dramatic enough to be written about? And that is it, because character is destiny. What a woman or a man is within themselves is going to tell the story of their life.
What amazes me about your book is, I mean, it's relatively small writing and it's whopping. You don't shortchange your audience, do you?
Well, no, I think that you have to give people what they want. And this is my 26th book, so they know what they're buying. They know the brand. They know Barbara Taylor Bradford is not going to shortchange them, and that we're going to have a good read and a good story. And this one has a lot of tension, a lot of suspense, couple of interesting love stories, a lot of criminality with forgeries and fakes, and there's everything going in this book to make it a non-put-downable book, I'm told. Absolutely. And I was an only child, and for a long time an only grandchild, and I had a few aunts and uncles, so I was very spoiled. And I went to Christchurch, C of E, in Armley, and guess who was there at the same time as me? Alan Bennett.
And both of you have gone on to great success. Do you think there was something in the water in those days?
I think there was something in that school, that little kindergarten. And the funny thing is, it was my darling Richard Whiteley, no longer with us, who told me on the day that Alan and I both got our honorary doctorates of letters from Leeds University, and we're standing there in flowing robes and velvet, sort of like velvet painters' hats, floppy velvet hats. He said, you two went to the same school, and we looked at each other, and I said, well, I don't remember. And Alan said, and I don't remember you. In his typical wonderful Yorkshire grumpy way.
Very nice. What were you like in those days? Were you always glamorous? Because when I just saw you on Alan Titchmarsh the other day, and you look so fabulous. Congratulations.
Thank you. I always tell people that when I look at photographs of myself when I was a little girl, that I looked as if I'd been starched and ironed from head to toe. I was always immaculately dressed when I was a child, for the most part, in starched dresses, because in those days you wore a dress, not jeans. But I always was interested in clothes, and for a while, when I was on the Yorkshire Evening Post, I was the fashion editor, and then I was fashion editor of Woman's Own. So I've always been interested in clothes and looking nice, and I think a woman should. I think it's sexy to look nice. And I like to look nice for myself.
Well, and you do. It does it for me, let me tell you, Barbara.
Oh, thank you.
When we look at your career in the beginning, you went from being a hard hack to writing these books now. The great thing you've got now is your humour. Did you have it in those days? Because I always think of, especially newspapers, as being a male-orientated, kind of hard-nosed people smoking fags and working till 3 in the morning. How did you fit into that environment?
Well, I didn't at first, and they really rather resented me. It was the editor who had been brought up to actually revamp the Yorkshire Evening Post from a broadsheet to a tabloid. And he was very interested in young people. And I'd written some stories for the paper and just put them in, and they'd use them without knowing who Barbara Taylor was. And then he discovered me and moved me to the reporter's room when I was just 16. And they really resented it because they couldn't swear. You know, they couldn't use their 4-letter words.
Yes.
They thought I was a spy planted there by this man. But my one friend in the paper, who was a bit older than me, but very nice, was Keith Waterhouse. And Keith, the editor said, look after her. And Keith said, I will, and I'll teach her how to write. And he did. But he always used to say, let's go to lunch. Have you any money?
What was your biggest scoop? What was the story you were most proud of?
I can't remember, honestly, Alex. I really can't. It's long ago.
Have you got any of the old papers? Have you got any old copies of stuff that you'd written?
No, unfortunately, I didn't keep any. Although Paul Napier, who is the editor of the Yorkshire Evening Post now, I went to the paper last year because it was the 30th anniversary of A Woman of Substance. And so I was on a book tour, you know, and I went to the paper, but it's not the office I went to. I used to go to work in Albion Street, you know. But anyway, he did find a piece that I'd written years ago, and I smiled when I read it. You know. But I didn't have a scoop, and I only know that I remembered what my news editor told me on my first day. Who, where, when, what, and why. And you know, that's what I say to myself when I write a novel.
Thank you, Barbara. I love you very much.
you.
Good luck with your new book. Thanks for coming on the programme. Playing the Game is the new book. Barbara Taylor Bradford is the author.